Chapter 4. The Philosophy of Control. Every empire needs more than soldiers and walls. To truly endure, a ruler must find an idea, a philosophy, that justifies his power and shapes the minds of his subjects. For the first emperor, that philosophy was legalism, a system that glorified law, punishment, and absolute authority. But why legalism? Why not Confucianism, with its ideals of virtue and benevolence? The answer reveals not only the emperor's paranoia, but also the logic of tyranny itself. In the centuries before Qin's rise, Confucian scholars preached a vision of moral rule. A ruler should govern with virtue, inspire loyalty through benevolence, and win respect through ethical example. To a man like Zheng, this was dangerous nonsense. He did not want to inspire love. He wanted obedience. He did not seek moral debate. He demanded silence. Confucianism placed limits on rulers. The idea that a king could lose the mandate of heaven if he became cruel or unjust. For a man obsessed with control, such limits were intolerable. Legalism, by contrast, told him exactly what he wanted to hear. People are selfish and untrustworthy. Only strict laws and harsh punishments can keep society in order. The ruler must hold power through fear, not virtue. It was the perfect mirror for his own worldview, shaped by betrayal and trauma. But legalism was not born with the first emperor. Its roots stretched back a century earlier to the radical reforms of Yang in the state of Qin. Yang dismantled the old aristocracy, replacing hereditary privilege with meritocratic ranks. Farmers and soldiers could rise through achievement, while nobles lost their untouchable status. Land was redistributed, families broken into smaller units for tighter control, and severe laws enforced obedience. Even minor crimes were met with brutal punishment: execution, mutilation, exile. It was terrifying, but it worked. Qin grew stronger, wealthier, and more disciplined than its rivals. For Zheng, Xiangyang's ghost was a teacher whispering across time. Only through law and terror could a fractured society be molded into steel. If Xiangyang was the engineer of legalist practice, then Han Fizi was its philosopher. A brilliant but cynical thinker, Han Fizi argued that a ruler must master three weapons. Fa, the law, harsh and impartial, binding all subjects. Shu, secret techniques of governance, the art of manipulation and control. Sure, power itself, the authority of position, greater than personal virtue. Han Fizi painted a dark picture of humanity. People are weak, greedy, and easily corrupted. To trust them is to invite betrayal. Only by binding everyone with rigid laws, enforced by fear, could stability be achieved. Tragically, Han Fizi himself fell victim to palace intrigue and died in Qin's prisons. But his ideas survived, and the first emperor turned them into the DNA of his empire. The man who carried Han Fizi's torch was Li Si, the emperor's ruthless chancellor. Li Si understood that theory meant nothing without enforcement. He designed the bureaucracy that extended the emperor's will into every corner of China. He oversaw the standardization of script and measures, and he orchestrated the book burnings and executions that silenced dissent. It was Li Si who transformed legalism from philosophy into a machine of domination. Imagine being a common farmer under Li Si's system. Your crops were taxed, your movements registered, your speech monitored, your books censored. The law was everywhere, watching you, waiting to punish the slightest mistake. The emperor was not just a man in a distant palace. He was present in the laws carved into wood and bamboo, in the soldiers stationed along the roads, in the officials who inspected your household. This was legalism made flesh, a state where the ruler's control was inescapable. Legalism gave the first emperor something no army could provide: a justification for absolute power. Where Confucianism limited rulers, legalism liberated them. Where morality appealed to virtue, legalism appealed to fear. Where tradition honored aristocracy, legalism destroyed it. It was the perfect tool for tyranny. Legalism turned a man into a godlike figure and a kingdom into a machine. It made Qin not only a conqueror of lands, but a conqueror of minds. But even the harshest laws could not quiet the emperor's deepest fear, the fear of death. Having built the perfect dictatorship, he now sought something greater, eternal life. In the next chapter, we will follow the first emperor's transformation into a god-king, as his obsession with immortality reshaped his empire and sealed its fate. Chapter 5. The God Emperor Complex. The wars were over. The six kingdoms were gone. Yingzheng now ruled a land larger and more populous than any empire the world had yet seen. But power changes people, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. For the first emperor, conquest was only the beginning. Now he sought something greater, not just to rule as a man, but to be worshipped as a god. When Yingzheng crowned himself Huangdi, he deliberately stepped beyond the bounds of mortal kingship. Kings had fathers, emperors did not. Kings ruled states. Emperors ruled all under heaven. In court rituals, he demanded obeisance never before required of a Chinese ruler. His image became sacred, his words divine edicts. The message was clear. Qin Shi Huang was no longer merely human. He was the son of heaven, chosen to command eternity. And like all gods, he expected devotion without question. To project his majesty, the emperor embarked on grand tours across his empire, vast journeys that blended governance with political theater. Imagine the spectacle: thousands of soldiers clearing the roads, banners fluttering in the wind, drums beating like thunder. In every city, officials bowed, commoners lined the streets, and tributes poured in. These journeys were not mere inspections. They were performances of omnipresence, proof that the emperor was everywhere, that no province lay beyond his gaze. For the people, the sight was awe-inspiring. For the emperor, it was intoxicating. But behind the glitter of power lurked fear, the same fear that haunted him since childhood, the fear of death. The first emperor could command armies, silence scholars, and reshape society, but he could not stop time. And so he turned to the impossible, immortality. He summoned alchemists, magicians, and charlatans who promised elixirs of eternal life. Expeditions were sent to the eastern seas in search of the Isles of Immortals. The most famous, led by Su Fu, may have reached as far as Japan. At court, strange potions laced with mercury and jade were forced upon him. Each sip was both hope and poison. For a man who had conquered everything, death remained the one enemy undefeated. If he could not live forever, he would build monuments that would. The Apang Palace, designed to be the grandest palace in history, rose as a testament to his boundless ambition. Its halls stretched so vast that poets later claimed birds grew tired flying across them. Beneath the earth, the terracotta army took shape. Thousands of life-size soldiers, crafted with exquisite detail, standing guard for eternity. Horses, chariots, officers, an entire ghostly army, frozen in clay, ready to protect their emperor in the afterlife. Imagine the scale: entire villages of craftsmen working for decades, pouring their lives into statues that would never be seen until long after their deaths. These projects were more than vanity. They were symbols of power eternalized in stone and earth, reminders that the emperor's reach extended even into death itself. But as his power grew, so did his paranoia. He had survived assassination attempts before. Jing Ke's dagger had nearly pierced his chest. That memory never left him. Now, surrounded by bodyguards, he traveled in secrecy, changing palaces constantly, sleeping in different chambers each night. Couriers were executed for the smallest mistake. Ministers lived in terror of his suspicion. Absolute power gave him everything, but it also took everything away: trust, peace, rest. The emperor was a prisoner of his own throne. Qin Shi Huang had become what he once dreamed of: supreme, unchallenged, eternal in image, if not in flesh. He reinvented kingship into godhood. He staged grand spectacles to prove his divinity. He sought immortality with desperate obsession. He left behind monuments meant to outlast the ages. And he descended into paranoia, consumed by the very power he worshipped. This was the God-Emperor complex, the ultimate corruption of humanity by unchecked authority. But immortality never came. In the end, the first emperor's body failed him, as it fails all men. And when he died, the system he built, so vast, so powerful, so terrifying, began to crack under its own weight. In the next chapter, we will see how the empire collapsed almost as quickly as it had risen, and how the perfection of Qin became the cause of its destruction. Chapter 6. The Price of Perfection. The first emperor believed he had built the perfect system. Every rival destroyed, every law enforced, every thought controlled. But perfection has a price. And for Qin, that price was destruction. Only 15 years after the first emperor proclaimed his empire, the dynasty he founded was gone. The very system that made Qin strong became the poison that killed it. The old Chinese saying warned, "Harsh government is fiercer than tigers." For the common people, life under Qin was suffocating. Taxes were crushing, labor conscription endless, punishments merciless. Farmers who failed to meet quotas were flogged, mutilated, even executed. Whole families were uprooted to work on imperial projects. To live in Qin was to live in fear and in exhaustion. What the emperor saw as order, his people felt as oppression. Beneath the silence of obedience, resentment was boiling. Two projects symbolized both Qin's grandeur and its fatal overreach: the Great Wall and the Apang Palace. The Great Wall, massive fortifications stretching across deserts and mountains, built to keep out northern nomads. Entire armies of peasants were conscripted to haul stones, dig trenches, and die in the wilderness. It was said that for every stone in the wall, a life was lost. The Apang Palace, planned as the largest palace ever built, a monument to imperial glory. Tens of thousands of laborers worked day and night, draining the empire's wealth and strength. Imagine being a farmer, torn from your fields, sent to a desolate frontier to die of cold and hunger. Or a craftsman, laboring in endless shifts to build halls you would never see, for an emperor who barely noticed your existence. The empire was consuming its own lifeblood. In 210 BCE, the first emperor died during a tour of his empire. His death was hidden, his body transported in secret, the stench of decay masked by carts of rotting fish. But the greater rot was political. The rightful heir, Fusu, a capable and respected prince, was forced to commit suicide through the machinations of two men: Zhao Gao, the sinister eunuch, and Li Si, the powerful chancellor. In Fusu's place, the weak and pliable Hu Hai was installed as second emperor. Under Zhao Gao's manipulation, Hu Hai became a puppet, paranoid, cruel, and incompetent. What had once been an empire ruled by fear now became an empire ruled by madness. It did not take long for the oppressed to rise. In 209 BCE, two minor officers, Chun Sheng and Wu Guang, led a group of conscripts bound for the frontier. Delayed by floods, they knew they faced death for failing their orders. Instead of submitting, they rebelled. Their cry echoed across China. The people are not born to be slaves. Though their revolt was small, it ignited a wildfire. Peasants, soldiers, and dispossessed nobles all rose in fury. Rebellions flared across the empire. The Qin armies fought back savagely, but the tide could not be stopped. The fear that once paralyzed the people now turned against their masters. Within just a few years, Qin's might crumbled. The Great Wall stood unfinished. The Apang Palace was abandoned. Zhao Gao betrayed even the puppet emperor Hu Hai, driving him to suicide. Qin generals defected, cities surrendered, rebels surged. By 206 BCE, less than 15 years after Qin Shi Huang declared himself the first emperor, the dynasty was gone. The empire that had promised eternity became the shortest of China's great dynasties. The fall of Qin was not an accident. It was the inevitable result of its own perfection. Harsh laws kept order, but smothered loyalty. Grand projects built monuments, but drained the nation. Absolute power silenced rivals, but left no room for capable succession. The system was too rigid to bend, so it broke. Qin's story is the warning of autocracy. What makes absolute power strong in the short term makes it unsustainable in the long term. Yet even as Qin crumbled, its shadow endured. The dynasty was gone, but its institutions, its centralized bureaucracy, its imperial title, its legalist machinery survived. In the next chapter, we will see how the Han dynasty rose from Qin's ashes, inheriting its system while softening its edges, and how the legacy of the first emperor shaped 2,000 years of Chinese history.